It is November of 1966 in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It's a crisp, clear night, the kind of natural beauty only autumn in Appalachia can bring. The lush green mountainsides have gone fiery as the season changed from summer to fall, vivid oranges, reds, and yellows flooding the landscape and turning the hills into a sunset. Now, in the dim light of the moon, the colors are muted but still glorious, dancing in a silvery blue glow. The spooky fun of Halloween has come and gone, leaving the warm, cozy feelings of the harvest, of fresh-pressed apple cider, corn mazes filled with happy families, cuddling up around a fire with a flannel blanket and a mug of something hot and sweet. Some people think Christmas is the most romantic time of the year, or Valentine's Day, or spring, when the wildflowers bloom and the breeze carries their perfume through the town. But to at least one happy couple, this is the most romantic thing they could possibly imagine. They're a young man and a young woman, driving down the winding country road. They're so in love, and they feel like the only two people in the entire world. At this moment, life is good. They're driving just to drive, to crank up the radio and enjoy being alone together. But after a long stretch of road with nothing much in sight, they decide to drive a little bit further away from town, over toward an area nicknamed the TNT area, for its former life as a World War II munitions plant site. Now, of course, it's just mostly wildlife out there, but it'll look beautiful at night, and it should be completely private. As the car winds around a curve in the road, the woman thinks she sees something out of the corner of her eye, and her heart skips a beat, taking her back to long-forgotten childhood fears. As a little kid, she always used to get nervous driving at night, imagining a monster running alongside the car as it went, trying to catch her. She used to picture long, pale limbs and big eyes, something loping along on all fours, dipping in and out of sight between the moonlight and the shadows. She would have nightmares about what the creature might do if it ever caught up to the car, if it ever reached through the window and pulled her out into the darkness. But of course, that was just a flight of fancy, the sort of thing a bored child's mind cooks up on a long drive. Imagining monsters where there are just dead tree branches or nocturnal animals. But now, seeing motion in the forest out the window, she feels that same breathless terror she felt as a little girl. She doesn't even realize she's squeezing her boyfriend's hand too tight until he pulls it away with a wince. "Easy, before you crush me." He laughs, but there's worry in his eyes. "You okay?" She nods, shaking off the feeling. "Sure, I'm fine." She privately chides herself for being so silly, for letting her own imagination get the better of her. She's lived in Point Pleasant all her life. She's no stranger to wildlife. Animals come out at night sometimes. It's just as much their world to live in as it is hers, she reminds herself. She's just starting to settle in, to let herself relax, when she sees it again. A fluttering motion, like great big dark wings, flapping at the edge of the area illuminated by the headlights. Something about it, the way it moves, the way it shimmers in the light, that seems to shine right through it like black mist. It feels deeply wrong. Like the old stories her grandfather used to tell her about the things you see in the mountains late at night, things you never want to come close to. He'd once told her about a mountain lion with the face of a woman, or a deer he watched stand up on its hind legs. She'd never seen anything quite like that, but the feeling he described, the deep sense of the unnatural, the way her mind and body recoil instinctively from this sight, feels the same. "Did you see that?" she asks, her throat so tight that her voice comes out in a whisper. Her boyfriend shakes his head. "See what? There deer out there? You know, a deer completely wrecked my last car, ran right into me. He was fine, got up and walked off like nothing happened. Me, on the other hand, no, it wasn't a deer." She shakes her head. "Never mind, it's silly." But the little break in her voice makes him pause. He turns the wheel, pulling the car over by the side of the road, and parks there. "Hey, look at me. What's got you so shaken up?" He puts a hand on her shoulder, giving it a comforting squeeze. I thought I saw something," she sighs, feeling absurd as she says it out loud. "Well, you probably did. All kinds of animals out here. But it's fine, they're more scared of us than we are of them," he reassures her. She shakes her head, frowning. "No, I know that. It wasn't an animal, I think. I couldn't quite see it, but I got this awful feeling. All the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Whatever I got a glimpse of, I can't explain it. I just feel like there was something wrong, like it wasn't supposed to be here." She rests her face in her hands, struggling to find the words. He rubs her back, unsure what else to do, what else to say. They sit like that for a long while, before she finally sits back up. "Want to go home?" he asks. She nods weakly. "I'm sorry, I know you wanted to go driving more, it's a new car." He cuts her off. "I want to do what you want to do." Come on, let's go by the diner and get a couple burgers. See if they've got any cherry pie left. Sound good? She nods. Sounds great. The young man is just about to put the car back in drive when there is a sudden fluttering motion, something moving through the headlight's beam. This time, they both see it, and they can only watch wide-eyed as it settles to a stop directly in front of their car. There, the size of a grown man with a 10-foot wingspan, is something unlike anything they have ever seen before. It's massive, dark gray, its face shielded from view by the limited light, with one notable exception. Boring into them are a pair of glowing red eyes, wide and piercing. Then, with a flap of its wings, as quickly as it appeared, the strange thing is gone again. The couple sit in complete silence for a long time before they turn to look at each other. They don't speak, but their expressions both say the same thing. You saw that too, right? Still too shocked to speak, the young man cranks the engine with trembling hands, and the two speed off back down the deserted road toward town. They have to get back. They have to call the police and tell them... What? That they saw a monster, a flying man with glowing eyes? Will anyone even believe them? Suddenly, the young woman's voice breaks through the tense quiet in the car. Behind us! She cries out. The man glances in the rearview mirror and sees what he would assume were red headlights if he didn't already recognize them. Sure enough, the massive thing is flying behind their car, following them along the road. The car takes a turn, and so does the creature. The car speeds up, and it flaps its wings to catch up to them. It doesn't do anything else, doesn't try to grab them or break the back windshield, it just follows them, watching with an expression that he could almost call curiosity. Then, after 5 tense miles, it just disappears again, and they're alone. Truly alone. That chill on the back of their necks is gone, and they know that wherever that creature came from, it's gone back there, at least for now. When they make it back to town, they pull into the police station and rush inside. They can hardly get their words out as they try to tell the officer on duty what exactly they saw. He's skeptical, of course. 2 scared kids seeing things that aren't there, he assumes. But they insist again and again that they know what they saw. He humors them, listens to their story, and suggests that it was some sort of large wild bird. Animals' eyes reflect light, he reminds them, and everything looks worse at night, especially when someone is already all worked up. Realizing they won't be believed, the couple head home and get ready for bed. But they don't sleep. They can't. All they can think about is that massive figure landing right in front of their car and staring directly at them. Its unbelievable wingspan, its speed, the strange interest it had shown in following them home until it disappeared without a trace. What did it want? Will it ever come back? As they lie in bed, staring up at the ceiling and replaying the events of the night again and again in their minds, they wonder if they'll ever get the answers to those questions. One thing is for certain, though. They'll never forget those eyes as long as they live. Contrary to what the police officer thought about their story, this pair of young lovers were not the only ones to see the strange, winged creature around Point Pleasant. Over the next month, others reported seeing similar things, and soon, eyewitness accounts were pouring in on a regular basis. A pair of volunteer firemen saw it while on duty, describing a massive bird with bright red eyes. A police officer reported seeing an unusually large bird-like animal with eyes that reflected the glow from his flashlight. A group of gravediggers doing their work looked up from their shovels to see something large, dark, and winged fly through the sky overhead, temporarily blotting out the moon. It soared overhead and landed in a far-off tree. All over town, people reported sightings of the creature, and the story grew and grew. The sheriff tried to calm the townspeople down, positing that it was just a sandhill crane, a large bird with a 7-foot wingspan and reddish coloring around its eyes. But the reports kept coming in, and they only got more bizarre. Some said it could fly over 100 miles per hour. Others said it could appear and disappear at will. A man in Salem, West Virginia blamed the creature for strange patterns appearing on the screen of his television set, and for strange noises he heard outside of his home at night. Then came the strange being's most infamous appearance. Eyewitnesses saw it, a massive, shadowy winged figure, on the night of December 15th, flying over the Silver Bridge, a suspension bridge over the Ohio River. Soon after this sighting, the bridge collapsed, and 46 people lost their lives. Though a fracture in the suspension chain was the culprit, people whispered around town that this mysterious creature was somehow responsible. If not responsible, then the monster was at least connected. It had to be. How could it be a coincidence? This mysterious apparition grew to be known as the Mothman, or simply Mothman. But to the SCP Foundation, it had a different name, SCP-2901, and according to their findings, there wasn't just one Mothman, but an entire species. SCP-2901 refers to a species of carnivorous scavenger creatures that, thus far, have demonstrated limited intelligence. They stand at an average height of 1.7 meters and generally appear to have an ellipsoidal shape with two large red eyes covered in photophoric tissue. Their bodies are covered in tiny iridescent scales, similar to those found in moths, butterflies, and other insects belonging to the Lepidoptera order. They are not bound by standard rules of space or time and are able to move through both at will. This gives them seemingly impossible abilities such as levitation, flight, teleportation, and the emission of an acoustic cancellation effect thought to help them avoid detection. In spite of these talents, they are still impervious to some ordinary forces, such as standard firearms. Due to their unique abilities making them especially elusive, these creatures have proven difficult to contain using conventional methods. Not only that, but it has become increasingly difficult over time to keep the general public from discussing the possibility of their existence. The first appearance of SCP-2901 on record occurred in West Virginia in 1967, shortly before the catastrophic collapse of the Silver Bridge. Since then, SCP-2901 instances have gone out of their way to avoid humans, keeping to themselves as much as possible and vanishing from sight when approached. However, they have continued to manifest near the sites of various disasters, appearing to a handful of eyewitnesses in the location approximately a week to a month before something terrible occurs there. Somehow, through a predictive ability compared by some researchers to a sense of smell, they are able to detect when an event resulting in multiple fatalities will occur. Once they have first appeared in an area, the creatures will remain there and guard it until the disaster comes to pass. They are extremely territorial, fighting with each other for dominance over the area, and even changing their shapes to frighten humans that wander into their territory. Once the disaster has occurred, the instances of SCP-2901 in the area will scavenge the dead until there is no more food left for them. Then, they will disappear once and for all, leaving no trace behind. Because SCP-2901 cannot be physically contained, the SCP Foundation has instead put guidelines in place for managing the creature's appearances, as well as what to do if an agent encounters one of these ethereal beings in the field. Cases involving SCP-2901 are assigned to Mobile Task Force 5-5, also known as the Twilighters, not to be confused with fans of a certain young adult vampire romance series. Any civilian encounters with SCP-2901 should be addressed with standard amnestic procedures, and any media leaks regarding the creatures such as social media posts, YouTube videos, or local news reports will be deleted or otherwise countered by the Information Detraction, Censorship, and Rescission Division. Field agents have been instructed to avoid SCP-2901 if possible, and carry mobile devices capable of SMS messaging in the event of one of the creatures using acoustic cancellation. If an operative comes face-to-face with an instance of SCP-2901, and there is no way to avoid a direct confrontation, there are specific steps that they must follow in order to minimize casualties. First, do not attempt to run away from the creature, lest it be provoked to chase after you. Second, hold your ground and maintain eye contact. Do not show weakness. Third, make a threat display, similar to the display the creatures use to frighten civilians away. Use your clothing to make yourself look bigger, stand on your tiptoes, and spread your arms wide. Continue this step until SCP-2901 either loses interest or is intimidated into standing down. If the creature approaches, do whatever you can to keep from touching it. Throw objects or brandish a makeshift weapon if you must. Though they do not tend to deliberately harm living humans, the fluctuating nature of the creature's position in space and time causes direct physical contact between them and a human to result in a dermal fusion. Essentially, they become stuck together. But the creature does not realize this. When they then attempt to flee and leave the human behind, the results are painful, to say the least. Imagine the feeling of ripping off a large Band-Aid. Now multiply that by 1,000, and multiply again. One more time? That's what it feels like. Though these guidelines were put together with Foundation field operatives in mind, they may come in handy for any civilian who accidentally crosses paths with SCP-2901. Should you find yourself in that unfortunate position, I hope that this information will help you avoid unnecessary trauma and pain. One more thing. I initially believed the preceding information to be all the available research into the nature of SCP-2901. However, after obtaining some additional security clearance through methods I won't detail here out of concern for the safety of all involved, I was able to locate this classified entry into its official file. It is a missive from the Information Detraction, Censorship, and Rescission Division and details a practice of containment known as Operation Surgeon's Photograph, intended to act as a public disinformation campaign regarding the nature of SCP-2901. The purpose of this operation is not to conceal information about SCP-2901 from the public, but rather to control the information they have access to. A summary of the operation's methodology and ongoing success was included and reads as follows. SCP-2901's current evolution is the sum of Foundation efforts in manipulating its existence through public perception. SCP-2901 are a group of extra-dimensional entities that lack a stable cohesive form and purpose that only coalesces through continued observational reconciliation. For SCP-2901 to maintain a stable physical mass, approximately 75% of the nearby human populace within 500 kilometers need to be congruent on a singular concept of what SCP-2901 is and what it does. SCP-2901 were first discovered and categorized as highly unstable Keter-class entities, capable of producing localized CK-class scenarios at random. Further research into SCP-2901's unstable manifestations proved to be futile, as, unbeknownst to Foundation scientists at the time, SCP-2901 would involuntarily change during each subsequent observation. During a containment breach into the civilian-populated areas within the Appalachian region of the southern United States, SCP-2901 began gradually condensing into a singular manifestation the more it was exposed to humans. Civilians began conceding to the idea that SCP-2901 was a dark, winged-like humanoid with large red eyes, which corresponded to pre-existing local folklore. SCP-2901 also began to evolve predatory-like behaviors and anomalous acoustic effects that conceptualized due to the mass fear generated within the surrounding communities. Foundation researchers recognized the effects and began isolating SCP-2901 as much as possible. However, deprived of regular perceptual input, SCP-2901 began to devolve into its initial highly unstable manifestations once again. The decision was made to maintain SCP-2901 in a functioning, manageable state through continued exposure to human perceptual belief that SCP-2901 is a tangible creature of local folklore, another Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster. The nearby Silver Bridge collapse of 1967 and the SCP-2901 Appalachian incursion, in reality, have no connection with one another. However, public opinion strongly disagreed, and henceforth, SCP-2901 began to appear at other future disaster events. This was the precursor of the precognitive scavenging animal-like behavior that is observed today. Efforts are to continue gradually introducing notions developed by the Foundation as to further SCP-2901's evolution into a more docile and manageable concept. I'm not sure I appreciate the implication that Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster don't exist. I, for one, am still holding out hope. But this finding still does compel me. Belief is a powerful thing. It can shape the world around us in unexpected ways, and apparently can even shift the nature of an entire race of creatures that otherwise refuse to abide by our rules and our understanding. Who knows what these beings will look like, how they will behave a few years down the line. For now, they are shadowy, precognitive scavengers, waiting in the wings for humanity to encounter disaster, then picking up the leftovers for themselves. They may not mean us any harm, but the sight of them can and should still strike terror into the heart. If you're ever out on your own and you spot a wide pair of glowing red eyes in the darkness, hear the rustle of leaves, of something floating through the trees like a cloud of black mist, you should probably leave that place immediately. You won't want to be there for what's coming next, because whether it takes a day or a month, SCP-2901 only goes where it knows it will be fed. If you want to support this important mission while also getting influence over the anomalies we cover and an exclusive look behind the scenes, check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the classified files of DrBob, such as SCP-4434, Anglerfish, for another glowing-eyed horror hiding in the darkness. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.